In the shadow of failure, a man is either broken or reborn. History remembers not those who fell, but those who rose from the ashes with greater strength, sharper cunning, and a relentless will to dominate. Today, we uncover how to transform your darkest defeat into a weapon, your most powerful comeback, through the cold, calculated strategies of Niccolò Machiavelli. The first step to transforming your worst moment into your greatest comeback begins with something most people cannot do: accepting the fall without emotion. This does not mean you must be blind to what has happened, nor does it mean you pretend that your pain does not exist. Instead, it means you must master the art of control over yourself, because in times of collapse, the greatest danger is not the failure itself, it is the way you react to it. Look at the world around you. Whenever a man falls from grace, he scrambles. He explains, he excuses, he begs for sympathy. He shows his wounds to the public as if displaying them will win back respect. But the truth, as Machiavelli understood, is brutal. The moment you let your emotions govern your downfall, you are no longer seen as a figure of strength. You are seen as weak, pitiful, and therefore expendable. People withdraw from the defeated not because of the fall itself, but because the fallen expose their desperation. A ruler, a leader, or even an ordinary man with ambition must never permit such a display. When you stumble, when the world mocks you, when you are stripped of what you thought was secure, you must respond with one weapon: your composure. For appearances, Machiavelli taught, are stronger than truth. What matters is not whether you are burning inside, but whether the fire can be seen on your face. If you cry out in despair, your enemies rejoice and your allies hesitate. They see instability, and instability is contagious. But if you endure the same loss with silence, with a steady gaze and a firm posture, they cannot be sure whether you have truly been defeated. In fact, many will assume you are already planning your return. This is the essence of political theater. Imagine a prince stripped of his kingdom. If he mourns in public, he becomes a beggar. If he accepts the loss calmly, if he greets even his enemies with dignity, whispers begin. Perhaps he still holds power. Perhaps he has hidden resources. Perhaps he has a strategy unseen. That uncertainty is enough to keep him alive in the minds of others, enough to prevent the final blow. You may not be a prince, but the principle is the same. When you fail, whether in business, in reputation, in relationships, in life, you must mask the collapse with discipline. It does not matter what you feel inside. Feelings are private, appearances are public. Let your face become a shield. Let your silence become a weapon. You are not required to explain your downfall to anyone. The more you say, the weaker you sound. Machiavelli himself observed the downfall of rulers in Italy, men who could have survived their defeats had they not panicked, had they not begged, had they not revealed their weakness. The crowd respects stability, even when it is false. They follow those who seem composed, even if they are secretly broken. This is why the first step in your comeback must be mastery of perception. Think of the Roman generals who, even in disastrous defeat, marched back into the city with their heads held high. Their armies might have been destroyed, their campaigns failed, yet the image they presented was one of dignity. History remembers them as warriors, not beggars, because they refused to wear their sorrow in public. The lesson is eternal. Hide your pain, and it becomes strength. Display your pain, and it becomes chains. Do not misunderstand. This is not about lying to yourself. You must know the reality of your situation. You must face it fully, but you must never give others the satisfaction of seeing you broken. The world preys on vulnerability. Every sign of desperation is an invitation for exploitation. Every tear is a weakness that an enemy will use. But when you carry yourself with calm acceptance, you turn your downfall into a mystery, a puzzle others cannot solve. And there is power in mystery. Your silence unsettles your opponents. They expect cries of defeat, but you give them stillness. They expect excuses, but you give them none. They expect you to fall apart, yet you stand composed. And in that moment, you are no longer a victim. You are an enigma. People fear enigmas because they cannot predict them. This is the posture you must adopt in your darkest hours. Your kingdom may be in ashes, your reputation torn apart, your wealth stolen, your allies gone. But if you show no desperation, then you have already planted the first seed of your return. For power is not only about possession, it is about perception. When others believe you are still dangerous, you remain dangerous. The truth is simple: defeat is survivable, humiliation is survivable, loss is survivable. But showing the world your despair is not. That is the one act from which there is no comeback. When a man suffers humiliation, his first instinct is to bury it, to forget it, or to drown it in anger. But humiliation, in its raw and painful form, is not a curse. It is information. It is a map of your weaknesses, a revelation of your blind spots, and a precise demonstration of where your defenses failed. Only a fool wastes humiliation by treating it as poison. The wise man, the Machiavellian man, treats it as medicine, bitter, sharp, but necessary for survival and strength. Every betrayal, every insult, every failure is a message. It tells you who cannot be trusted. It exposes the cracks in your armor, and it shows you the exact place where your enemies struck. If you are humiliated because you trusted the wrong friend, then you have learned that loyalty is not where you thought it was. If you are humiliated because you spoke too much and your words were used against you, then you have learned that silence is worth more than speech. If you are humiliated because you underestimated an opponent, then you have learned that arrogance blinds more men than any weapon ever forged. Think of it this way: humiliation is a mirror that strips away your illusions. It shows you what others really think of you when your guard is down. It reveals the harsh truth of how fragile your position may be. Most people cannot stand to look into this mirror. They smash it in anger or turn away in shame. But those who wish to rise stronger must not turn away. They must stare directly into the reflection and study it without flinching. Machiavelli believed that power is never safe. A prince must constantly examine the vulnerabilities of his rule, because those vulnerabilities are precisely where conspiracies form, where rivals attack, where the people turn against him. To ignore humiliation is to ignore intelligence gathered from the battlefield. And in the war for power, every detail matters. So when you are disgraced, you must immediately transform your perspective. Do not say, "I have been ruined." Say instead, "I have been educated." Your downfall is a tutor that no ally, no book, no mentor could ever provide. It teaches with cruelty, but it teaches the truth. If you can extract lessons from the moment you are humiliated, you become armed in ways others are not. Because most men waste their suffering. They either collapse under it or distract themselves from it. But the man who mines his humiliation for wisdom builds a foundation that can never again be so easily shaken. Consider the generals who lost great battles in history. Those who allowed humiliation to consume them disappeared into obscurity. But those who studied their defeats, who analyzed every error, often returned to the field as far more dangerous opponents. Defeat taught them what victory could not. They learned which soldiers were weak, which strategies were flawed, which terrains were deadly. In the same way, your humiliation gives you knowledge about the terrain of your own life. It tells you who you are surrounded by, how strong your allies truly are, and where your greatest risks lie. Humiliation also strips you of illusions about others. When you are down, you see clearly who celebrates your fall. You see who laughs behind your back, who suddenly distances themselves, who refuses to stand beside you. This revelation is priceless. These are the same people who would betray you later when your position grows even stronger. Better to see them now, while you are fallen, than to discover them when they hold daggers at your back. Every humiliation cleans your circle of those who were never loyal in the first place. But the greatest value of humiliation lies in what it teaches you about yourself. Pain unmasks the parts of your character you could never see when everything was going well. It shows you how easily you anger, how quickly you despair, how fragile your pride may be. And in this revelation, you gain the power to fortify yourself. For how can you protect a fortress if you do not know where its walls are crumbling? Your humiliation tells you where the cracks lie. To ignore it is suicide. To study it is survival. This is why the Machiavellian man treats his humiliation not as an end, but as raw material. It is clay, ugly and formless, but ready to be shaped into something strong. You take the insults, the betrayals, the failures, and you dissect them with precision. Why did this happen? Who was responsible? Where was I blind? What should I never repeat? Every answer becomes a stone in the new foundation you are building. Every lesson is another layer of armor forged in the fire of defeat. It is tempting to let pride push you away from this process. Pride whispers, forget the humiliation, rise above it, prove them wrong. But rising without studying the fall is like building a fortress on sand. You will rise only to collapse again. Pride wants quick recovery, but power demands patient study. If you do not extract every ounce of information from your downfall, you are destined to repeat it, and the second fall will be even harsher than the first. So take your humiliation, embrace it as knowledge, and carve it into memory. Do not try to erase it. Let it become part of your story, because in that story lies the wisdom that will make your comeback stronger, colder, and more unshakable than anything you built before. When men fall, it is rarely because of their enemies alone. More often, it is because of those closest to them, their friends, their partners, their confidants. The chains that bind a man to ruin are usually the same ones he forged out of trust, loyalty, and dependence. If you are to transform your worst moment into your strongest comeback, you must begin by cutting those chains. You must break all attachments that led to your downfall. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn because it requires you to turn against what once felt safe. Human beings cling to familiarity even when it poisons them. They remain loyal to friendships long past their usefulness. They hold on to systems and routines that have already proven themselves weak. They trust those who have already betrayed them once. And in doing so, they guarantee that when they rise, they will fall again, because they never removed the roots of their destruction. Machiavelli warned that misplaced loyalty is one of the deadliest dangers to power. A prince who surrounds himself with men who cannot be trusted is already digging his own grave. An ambitious man who attaches himself to weak allies, unreliable friends, or treacherous partners will always be vulnerable. And when ruin comes, it almost always comes through these channels. So if your downfall has shown you who betrayed you, who failed you, who dragged you down, then you must cut them away without hesitation. This act requires ruthlessness. It is not enough to quietly distance yourself. Weak ties have a way of creeping back, like vines that strangle the tree they cling to. You must sever them completely. If a friend abandoned you in your hour of need, do not give them another chance to prove their disloyalty. If a partner failed to protect you, do not let sentiment blind you to their weakness. If an ally revealed themselves to be self-serving, do not waste your time hoping they will change. They will not. People rarely transform, they repeat. And if you allow them back into your life, you are not a strategist. You are a fool. Think of power like a fortress. When a fortress falls, the commander does not rebuild with the same rotting wood, the same crumbling stones, the same unguarded gates. He replaces them with stronger material. He closes the breaches. He learns which walls must be thicker, which guards must be more loyal. In the same way, when you rebuild yourself, you must remove the rotting pieces. The people, habits, and attachments that led you into ruin must be discarded entirely, or they will betray you again when the enemy returns. But it is not only people that must be severed. Sometimes your downfall came from your own habits, your own comforts, your own illusions. Perhaps you clung to an outdated system of work. Perhaps you depended on the approval of others. Perhaps you placed faith in institutions that were never built to protect you. These, too, must be abandoned. Every comeback requires a rebirth, and rebirth means sacrifice. You cannot rise carrying the same weight that dragged you into the dirt. Do not confuse this with bitterness. This is not about hatred. It is about strategy. A commander does not hate the weak stones he replaces in his walls. He simply knows they cannot be trusted to defend him again. You must adopt this same cold clarity. Your downfall has revealed the weak spots in your life. Now, cut them out with precision and make room for stronger foundations. And understand this: the moment you begin to detach, the world will resist. Old friends will return with apologies. Betrayers will swear they are loyal now. Weak allies will promise they will do better next time. Do not believe them. Machiavelli knew that men act according to their nature, and their nature does not change. The one who abandoned you once will abandon you again. The one who betrayed you once will betray you again. Forgiveness may be noble in religion, but in the realm of power, forgiveness is suicide. There is also a psychological liberation in this act. When you cut away those who weakened you, you reclaim your autonomy. You are no longer chained by obligation, no longer burdened by false loyalty, no longer dependent on unstable pillars. You create space for new strategies, new alliances, and new structures that will support the strength of your return. And in this clarity, you find freedom, the freedom to rise without the same weights dragging you down again. This is the cleansing fire of downfall. It burns away not only your illusions, but also the people and systems that held you back. And though it feels brutal to sever these ties, the brutality is necessary. For the man who dares to rise from ruin must rise with a cleaner circle, a sharper vision, and a fortress rebuilt with stone that will not crumble under pressure. The greatest mistake a man makes after a downfall is to announce his recovery too soon. He speaks of his plans, he reveals his ambitions, he tries to convince the world that he is coming back. But such noise exposes his weakness, because a man who talks about his return is not yet ready to make it. He seeks validation, he craves reassurance, he begs the world to take him seriously. And in doing so, he alerts his enemies, who sharpen their daggers, and he alerts his rivals, who prepare to block his path before he has even taken his first step. The truth is simple: the weak rebuild in public, the strong rebuild in silence. Machiavelli knew that secrecy was one of the most powerful weapons in politics and in life. A prince who reveals his intentions too early gives his opponents the chance to destroy him before he acts. A man who speaks of his plans too freely becomes predictable, and predictability is death in the game of power. When you are broken and beginning to rise again, you must wrap yourself in shadows. You must learn to move unseen. There is a reason why conspiracies succeed only when they are hidden. The more people who know a plan, the more fragile it becomes. The same law applies to your comeback. Speak little, show little, and let the world assume you are finished. The more they believe you are powerless, the less they will resist you. Their guard will drop, their attention will wander, and in that space, you will prepare without interference. Consider the predator in the wild. The lion does not roar before it strikes. It crouches low in the grass, waiting silently until the moment comes when the prey cannot escape. Then, and only then, does it reveal itself. This is how you must approach your return. Conceal your movements. Work in private. Build alliances in secret. Accumulate strength where no one can see it. And when the moment of action arrives, strike with such speed and force that the world has no time to react. History itself is filled with such examples. Many rulers who lost their crowns vanished from sight, leading their enemies to believe they were defeated. In exile, they rebuilt their networks, secured funds, forged alliances, And when they returned, it was not as broken men begging for power, but as conquerors reclaiming what was once theirs. They did not send letters announcing their comeback. They did not parade their intentions in front of the crowd. They returned suddenly, decisively, when their strength was complete. This is the art of resurrection. You must also understand that silence protects you from ridicule. When you announce your comeback before you are ready, the world laughs. They test you. They challenge you before your power is solid. If you fail in that state, you will be humiliated twice, once by your original downfall and again by your premature attempt to rise. But when you rebuild in silence, you deny them this opportunity. They cannot laugh at what they cannot see. They cannot sabotage what they do not know. Silence becomes your armor. There is another advantage to rebuilding quietly. It forces you to focus on substance instead of appearance. Many men waste their recovery trying to prove to others that they are still strong, that they are still important, that they are still feared. They chase the image of power without building the foundation of power itself. But the man who keeps quiet is free from this distraction. He builds not for applause, but for dominance. He is not chasing validation. He is constructing inevitability. And when the time comes, his results will speak louder than any declaration could. In practical terms, this means working with discipline behind closed doors. It means choosing carefully who is allowed to see your progress and trusting only those whose loyalty has been tested. It means allowing others to underestimate you because their underestimation is a shield. The more they think you are finished, the less resistance you will face when you return. What begins as invisibility becomes your greatest weapon, because it gives you the freedom to grow without pressure and the element of surprise when you finally move. This is the stage of transformation where patience becomes power. The man who is desperate to be seen will act too early. The man who is willing to remain invisible will act only when the moment guarantees success. Timing is everything, and only those who can hold their silence long enough can choose the perfect moment to act. So do not seek to convince the world that you are recovering. Do not waste your energy trying to prove yourself too soon. Instead, let your silence breed doubt. Let your absence create questions. Let your enemies assume they have already buried you. And when you return not as the broken man they expected, but as a figure so transformed, so calculated, so commanding, that your reappearance feels less like recovery and more like destiny itself. The world respects transformation more than restoration. When a man falls and rises again looking exactly as he did before, people see him as a survivor, nothing more. But when a man returns in a new form, colder, sharper, more commanding, the world sees not just survival, but rebirth. Your comeback must not be a return to who you were. It must be the creation of a new identity, forged in the fire of your downfall and hardened by the lessons of humiliation. This is not about regaining your old position. It is about emerging as someone unrecognizable, someone untouchable. Most men make the mistake of chasing back their former selves. They want to reclaim the life they lost, the reputation they once had, the comfort they enjoyed before disaster struck. But this is weakness. The man who tries to resurrect his old self forgets the truth. It was that self which failed. It was that self which was betrayed, humiliated, and destroyed. To rise again as the same man is to walk willingly back into the same trap. What is required is not restoration, but transformation. Machiavelli knew that appearances ruled men more than truth, and nothing alters appearances more powerfully than reinvention. When you change your form, when you alter how you speak, how you move, how you present yourself, people no longer see the defeated man of yesterday. They see a new figure whose limits they cannot predict. This uncertainty breeds caution, and caution breeds respect. Think of a serpent shedding its skin. The creature does not emerge weaker. It emerges renewed, stronger, more dangerous. Your identity must undergo the same shedding. Whatever weaknesses defined you before must be stripped away. If your downfall came from being too trusting, your new self must be guarded, calculating, and unreadable. If your downfall came from arrogance, your new self must radiate controlled confidence, quiet and deliberate. If your downfall came from fear, your new self must walk with the presence of someone who fears nothing. Every scar you carry must not be hidden. It must be weaponized. Your scars become signals that you have endured what others could not, that you have been tested and survived. There is great psychological power in this transformation, because it does not only alter how others see you, it alters how you see yourself. Men trapped in their past failures remain chained to them. They define themselves by what they lost, and they forever measure their worth against the shadow of their downfall. But when you choose to create a new identity, you are no longer competing with your old self. You are not trying to recover him. You are burying him. You are declaring that he is dead, and that in his place stands someone who carries his memory, but not his weakness. History remembers not those who returned unchanged, but those who rose transformed. The general who returns to battle after defeat must not fight the same way he did before, or he will be crushed once more. But if he adapts his strategies, if he reinvents his methods, if he presents himself as a new force entirely, his enemies will find themselves facing someone they cannot anticipate. In this lies the advantage of transformation. It forces the world to reassess you, and in that reassessment, you gain power. This is not limited to power in war or politics. It applies to every field of human ambition. A man who suffers humiliation in business, in society, or in personal life must reappear not as the same figure begging for recognition, but as someone altogether different. Change your habits, your discipline, your aura. If you were once too available, become elusive. If you were once desperate for approval, become indifferent. If you were once ignored, return with such presence that silence is no longer an option. This transformation must be deliberate. You cannot simply wait for time to change you. You must carve the new identity yourself. Choose what must die within you and what must be reborn. Choose the qualities that will define your new form and cultivate them with precision. Every action you take in your silence, every discipline you adopt, every lesson you carve into your being becomes part of this new identity. When you finally step back into the world, you must embody it fully, without hesitation, without cracks. Understand this: people respect what is unfamiliar. They are intrigued by what they cannot explain. When you reappear after ruin, you must look and act in such a way that they do not know how to categorize you. They should whisper, "He is not the same." That whisper is the beginning of fear, and fear is the beginning of power. Machiavelli reminds us that to be feared is safer than to be loved, and transformation is the path to that fear. So do not waste your comeback trying to convince the world that you are the same man who once held glory. That man died in your downfall. Your task now is to present yourself as his successor, stronger than he ever was, colder than he ever could be, and far more dangerous to underestimate. When you reach the stage of transformation, you must not think of yourself as returning to who you once were. That man, that version of you is gone. Defeat, failure, and humiliation destroyed him. But out of that destruction, a new figure can emerge, sharper, colder, more commanding. This is the essence of the comeback, not restoration, but reinvention. You do not simply recover. You evolve into something that never existed before. In your darkest collapse lies the raw material of greatness, but only if you are willing to burn the old version of yourself and craft a stronger one in its place. Understand this: people are watching. The same crowd that mocked your fall, the same silent observers who whispered of your end, are waiting to see if you can rise. They expect you to crawl back to mediocrity, to beg for pity, to be satisfied with scraps. But Machiavelli teaches that their expectation is your weapon. If they underestimate you, you must use their blindness as the cover for your return. When you rise, you must rise so differently, so powerfully, that they no longer recognize the man they once pitied. The very people who counted you out must now fear to cross you, and those who abandoned you must now fight for a place at your table. Think of it as forging a blade. A sword gains its strength not in its first shape, but in the fire and hammering it endures. Steel that has not been through the furnace is brittle, weak, easily shattered. But steel that has been broken down, beaten, reforged emerges sharper than ever. This is what your darkest hour gives you. It is the furnace. It is the strike of the hammer. And if you endure it with discipline, you emerge not as the same, but as something far more dangerous. Yet there is a danger here. Too many men, when given the chance of transformation, waste it. They return to their old habits, the same weaknesses that ruined them before. They tell themselves that time will heal everything, but time heals nothing. It only rots the wound further if it is not treated. To truly transform, you must dissect your past self with ruthless honesty. What patterns led to your downfall? What allies betrayed you? What illusions blinded you? If you do not expose these flaws and cut them out, you will rebuild your empire on the same cracked foundation, doomed to collapse once more. Your reinvention must also carry an element of theater. Remember, power is perception. It is not enough to rebuild in silence. You must show the world a symbol of your new self. Whether it is through your appearance, your achievements, or your actions, you must make it visible that you are no longer the defeated man they once knew. If you once spoke softly, now let your words cut like blades. If you once sought approval, now command respect through distance. If you once feared enemies, now use their existence to display your strength. A transformation without outward proof is invisible, and in politics, in business, in life, what is invisible might as well be dead. But never mistake this transformation for play acting. It must not be hollow, for hollow facades collapse under pressure. Instead, you must weave together the inner steel of discipline with the outer display of strength. This is the Machiavellian balance, the reality of power inside, and the theater of power outside. Together, they form the new you, the figure who cannot be crushed by the weight of failure, because failure itself has been absorbed into his armor. And know this truth: those who have never fallen, who have never been broken, will always lack a certain kind of strength. They may appear untouchable, but their confidence is untested. You, however, carry scars that have hardened into armor. You have faced disgrace and risen from it. That makes you dangerous in a way they can never be. Transformation after disaster does not just restore what was lost. It grants a kind of immunity. You will no longer fear the storm, because you have already survived one. This is the final key: turn your ruin into the foundation of a new identity, one that is stronger precisely because of what it has endured. In your reinvention, you must appear inevitable, unstoppable, untouchable. The man who fell is gone, and in his place stands someone who will never be underestimated again. So now you understand. The fall was never your end, it was your beginning. The humiliation, the betrayal, the despair you once thought unbearable was nothing more than the fire that forged you. In the hands of the weak, ruin is a grave. But in the hands of the strong, ruin is the battlefield where a greater version of themselves is born. Machiavelli would tell you, fortune destroys the careless man, but she sharpens the disciplined one. Your worst moment is not a curse. It is the proof that you have entered the arena where power is truly earned. Those who mocked you, who counted you out, who turned their backs, will soon be forced to watch as you rise with more strength, more cunning, and more control than ever before. Their memory of your weakness will make your power even more terrifying. This is the art of the comeback. It is not about returning to who you were. It is about becoming someone the world has never seen. You emerge colder in strategy, sharper in discipline, unshakable in will. You carry the scars of defeat not as shame, but as armor, and with every step, You remind the world that you are not a man to be pitied, but a man to be feared, respected, and followed. Remember, this life will not spare you, it will test you. But if you embrace Machiavelli's strategy, every fall becomes the stage for your most dangerous ascent. Let others waste their pain in self-pity. You will turn yours into power. Let others beg for sympathy. You will rise with silence and strength. Let others crumble. You will transform. The final truth is this: your comeback is not just survival. It is domination. From your ruin, you do not simply rebuild. You return as the version of yourself that no enemy can destroy, no betrayal can weaken, and no storm can break. That is how you turn your worst moment into your strongest comeback.